I don't rebuild engines often, but when I do, I prefer to save a lot of money. Remember, stay greasy, my friends. Gearhead 327. Guys, this video is going to be about rebuilding your first engine. This is not a video for you experienced engine builders out there. This is for someone who's never done this before, and I want to give you a couple tips and tricks. Well, this is a 350 Vortec, and this originally came in that K2500 that I got a while back, and I got this off of a guy, and he started the rebuilding process, and somewhere along the lines he kind of got disenchanted with it, and he ended up buying another vehicle. And he literally poured a crap ton of money into this engine, and he told me I should take it apart, and he didn't know what he was doing. And guys, I'm not using this to make fun of anybody. We're going to use this as a learning experience. That way we can all learn something from it. And guys, I guarantee you there's people out there who claim to know how to rebuild engines, and they've been doing it since they were 4. But you know, at one point or another, there was a time they didn't know what they were doing either. Okay, so like I said, this is just going to be a little engine rebuilding classroom. The number one piece of advice I can give you is organization. Okay, and when you pull this out of your vehicle, I don't care, if it's 1996 K2500, or if it's a 1970 Chevelle, or if it's an 03 Mustang, whatever you're pulling it out of, the best thing you can do is take some tape and a marker and label all the wires on there, or you can take pictures of it. That truck I got out there, nothing was labeled, okay, and that just makes it that much more difficult and confusing. So label everything, and even the hoses, you pull it off, you go, I'll remember that. Well, a month or two goes by, and I don't have a photographic memory, so a picture can straighten you out, or you can draw a diagram or something like that. But label, relabel, and label again. I'm not doing a teardown video because there's plenty of videos out there on the internet on how to tear down engines. I would say most people can't even talk. I'm not doing a teardown video because of the sheer number of teardown videos that are on the internet. I would say that most people are capable of tearing an engine down. The problem comes putting it back together. Now, one thing you can do to mitigate putting it back together is you can get organized, and you can get some of these bags right here, and if you take the oil pan bolts off, you can label them, and you can say, oh, that goes to the oil pan, and okay, we got that figured out. And now guys, I don't have bolts, and this is an example. You can get one of these organizers. You can put your cam bolts in there, your manifold bolts, your balancer bolt. You can put valve cover. You can put your engine bracket bolts in there. These ones that go right here, they're different sizes. You'll be able to figure out what they are. But I have quite literally seen people tear engines down and put all the bolts in like a Maxwell House coffee can, and then it'll rain and get water in it, and they've got a bunch of rusty bolts, and when it's time to come to assemble their engine, their memory's not so good. So organization is going to be key. Alright, this is a 4-bolt main, as you can see, 1, 2, 3, 4. I know some people argue on the internet people argue that the 2-bolt main is stronger than a 4-bolt main. So I would like someone to explain to me how 2 bolts are stronger than 4 bolts. Okay? But anyway, guys, when you get to this point right here, this is your number one. You see where the arrow is pointing? That always points to the front of the engine. This one is self-explanatory. I guess you could put this one here and you can put that one here, but something would not be right with it. So now this one has to be labeled, and what the guy did is you can he did do it correctly. He put he punched it out. You can buy some of those punches. These are ones you can get up at Harbor Freight. They're not very expensive. They come in small and large sizes, and if you see, he did label that. That's got a number 1, that's number 2, number 3, and number 4. And then this one, of course, is self-explanatory. I guess you could put that one over there and that one over there if you want to do some modifications with a grinder or whatever. But if you don't put these in their proper order, like if you were to put this one that goes here, put that one there, and put this one over here, and then put that one right there, when you go to assemble the engine, something may be, cattywampered in it, and it may not spin freely, or it might have problems, or it may not last as long as it would. So I see a lot of engines for sale on Facebook Marketplace and Craigslist, and they're selling small blocks without mains. So if you're buying one of these and someone is taking it apart, make sure they did label it. If it wasn't labeled, then the price goes down considerably. So, because like I said, you got to get somebody to straighten that out. But that's got to be marked. The next thing that you have to do, you have to mark the connecting rods. Well, I mean, you don't have to, but it's good sense to do it. That way you can put the same piston and the same rod in the same hole, and that's very handy if you're not boring the engine. Even if you bore the engine out, putting the same rod in there, and if there is any factory balance or someone had it balanced before, you're going to pretty much retain that balance. So that's one thing. Now, guys, this, like I said, is a small block Chevy, and let me just roll this over and explain this to you a little better. Alright, those were originally punched, and for whatever reason the machine shop decided to put their engraving in there, I guess so they could see it better. But when you label your connecting rods, you want to do it according to the numbers of the cylinders. Now, this is a small block Chevy, and small block Chevy, big block Chevy, small block Mopar, and big block Mopar, it starts off 1, 3, 5, 7, 2, 4, 6, 8. Okay, so you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, now when we roll this over, it's going to be upside down. I mean, I guess you could punch it, you could crawl up underneath the engine and you could punch it that way. It just makes it easier this way. But so now we've rotated the engine 180 degrees, so this on this side is 1, 3, 5, 7, 2, 4, 6, 8. Okay. I want to say too that if you have a Ford, okay, their system's a little different. Now I know it's upside down. That would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Now, if that's confusing you, they have diagrams on the internet. Okay, but for all practical purposes, we're back to Chevrolet, and this is the number 8. This is the one this came out of. So when that's in there like that, and it would still be attached to the crankshaft, you want to punch this piece and that piece, and that way you can put it back together, and you see the dot goes to the forward of the engine. Okay, so that's how that works. Now, I guess it doesn't matter if you punch it on that side, but if you punch them on both sides, it's going to make it confusing which way this cap is. Okay, for some people. All right, you can look at it and see that that goes together with another one. So now, once you've gotten everything labeled and stamped and organized and everything, you're going to have a big greasy mess. The first thing I would do is I would take this engine, I would pick up the crankshaft. No, that's not the crankshaft that came with it, but I would use it as an example. I'd take that crankshaft, because that's a two-piece. This is a one-piece seal here. But I would take the crankshaft, I would take the heads, and I would take the pistons and rods down to the machine shop, and I'd have everything checked out. The first thing I would do is I would tell them, hot tank the block, and I want it magnafluxed. And the reason for that is, that gets rid of all that crud off of it, and magnafluxing is going to see if there's any cracks in it. Now, guys, you don't want to take an engine and pour a crap ton of money into it and then find out there's a crack in the block. Driving down the road and you see water in the oil in the water, or both, or you have some other type of issues, water coming out of the exhaust, But that would be the first thing I would do. And what would happen is, once the machine shop gets it all cleaned up and magnafluxed, they're going to check everything. They're going to check the line bore on the mains right here. They'll make sure there's nothing going on with that. the other thing they're going to do, let's turn this over, is they're going to check the lifter bores. They're going to check the deck and make sure it's flat and it's not warped, and they're going to look for any other problems, and they're going to check the bore. And I've taken engines to the machine shop, and sometimes they say they need to be bored and sometimes they don't. Now the advantage of a engine that doesn't need a bore is you can reuse the old pistons, okay, and you save some money doing that. So ultimately, guys, that's why one of the reasons we want to rebuild our engines is because we want to save some money, and we probably want a little more power along the way. So, but anyway, that's what you're going to get. And then let's just say, for example, they tell you, yeah, it needs to be bored, and they're going to say, do you want us to put the cam bearings and the freeze plugs in there, or core plugs, for you people who are anal out there. And for your first engine, I would say, yeah, have them put the core plugs in, and make sure you get brass, guys. And guys, I can't tell you how many of those old clunker cars I drove back in the day, and the steel freeze plug would get a hole in it, a rust hole, and it would be a bear to try and get a new one in there, because all the stuff in the way and everything. Now, if you get brass, you're going to mitigate those problems. And if you see one is missing here, and that is because, well, the guy gave me one with the engine to go in there. But what happened is he used a machine shop. I don't want to say who he used, because anybody can make a mistake. But it was not a machine shop in Tampa, and it was not a machine shop in Hillsborough County. Okay, I'll leave it at that. But like I said, anybody can make a mistake. But he got the engine back from the machine shop. They bored it out, checked everything, and as they were rolling the engine over on the engine stand, they were hearing a rattling in there, so they traced it down to right here, and they popped that out, and the machine shop had smashed the old freeze plug in there and then put the new freeze plug on top of it. Okay. Now, guys, I don't know what the reason for that is. Now, like I said, I would get a good, reputable machine shop. Now, guys, I use Isley's here in Tampa. I've used them for 25 years, and I give them top marks. And if you go down there and say Gearhead 327 sent me, they won't know who I am. Okay, so I don't go down there every week or every month. Okay, I go down there every now and then, but I've got the tool to put that in, and I've got some of this. I have a video on how to do this yourself, but like I said, for your first time, guys, I would just let the machine shop do it. The other thing they're going to ask you is, do you want them to put the cam bearings in? And I would say, for your first one, yes. Let them put the cam bearings in. Let them put all the plugs in here. There's plugs in here that you don't even know about, okay, if you're a first timer. More likely you don't know about them. So that would be my recommendation. And the next thing I would do is, the next thing they're going to tell you is, well, there's a picture of a pretty nasty old crankshaft, guys. They can take a crankshaft that looks like that, and they can take it from that to this over here. Okay, so they will look at the crankshaft and they will say, oh well, these probably need the mains, or the rods and the mains need to be turned 10 over or 20 over, whatever. It depends on how many times it's been rebuilt. I took a crankshaft down a while back, and the snout on it was bad, so they were not able to save that. So now, guys, this is not a rebuilt crankshaft. It hasn't been turned. This is a new one that came with the engine, and I was looking at it, and these threads were all cross-threaded and galled up and everything. So I took it down to Isley's, and they said that would be an easy fix. They fixed it, and one of the owners down there, Debbie, says, oh, that's a radius crankshaft. Make sure you put the right bearings in there. Okay? And look at the journals on this thing. And what had happened, guys, is the guy put the wrong the bearings are. Now I don't know why those are scratched up, okay, but that's the bearings that were in there, and you can see the different size of the correct ones. So those are the correct ones. And what I did is I just had the machine shop order those for me, and that would be my recommendation on your first engine, okay? Regardless whether you get a new crankshaft or not, you have them order the bearings, the rings, the pistons, you know, and that way you're guaranteed you're going to get all the right stuff, okay? Now, this guy, like I said, I'm not making fun of him, you know, because anybody can make a mistake. I mean, I know I've made mine, made a bunch of them, but if you don't put the right bearings in there, you're going to have problems down the road, literally. So, but that kind of demystifies the thing. The other thing is the machine shop is probably going to ask you, what are your intentions with your engine? And, you know, I mean, personally, I would love to have, you know, like a, you know, 3,000 or 4,000 horsepower small block. That'd be nice. Put that in that truck, you know. But that's not reality, guys. Okay, if you're going to build horsepower, you know, horsepower is built off of, you know, cubic inches, high compression, good flowing cylinder heads, and your camshaft. Okay, that's what's going to make horsepower. But this right here is just going to be a bread and butter engine for my truck, for going and picking up groceries, picking stuff up from, you know, Home Depot or Lowe's, and maybe pulling my utility trailer and mower and maybe a boat, you know, something like that. So, and the cam that came with it is a Summit 8800, which is just one size over stock. So, you know, for towing and everything, you don't want to really use an aggressive cam, because it doesn't make any power until it hits 3,000 or 4,000 RPMs or whatever, depending on how aggressive the cam is. But the machine shop, you can tell them and say, well, I'd like, you know, I'd like 400 horsepower out of this, and they're going to say, well, I would go with this type of cam. They'll make a suggestion, which you can buy that from them too, and they'll say, well, you should have so much compression, and well, you've got Vortec heads here, which this is what came with the engine too. This is these are 906s, and you see they've had a little bit of money put into them. So, but anyway, the machine shop can give you a good idea. And guys, if you're really unsure about, you know, rebuilding your engine, and there's some stuff you're just not really feel confident in, the machine shop can do it for you. You know, they give you price, and you guaranteed they're going to do it right. So, all right, those are some heads off of a 1972 one-ton Chevy truck, and those are 487 castings. Okay, there's nothing wrong with them. They just need to be cleaned up, and well, they just need to be cleaned up and need to have a valve job on them. But you would of course take those up there, and you know, you have to ask yourself, is it worth it to have the machine shop redo the heads you've got on there? If you already have Vortec heads, you might want to think about, you know, going with that. Or do I want to spend, you know, I don't know. I think the last time I had a set of old heads like that redone, now this was some years ago, it was $350. So I don't know what it would cost today. You can call your machine shop and ask them what they charge to do it, you know, if they're not cracked. And they'll check them out, and they'll make them right. So that's a decision you have to make, or if you want to get, you have to make, or you can get some aluminum aftermarkets, or you can get some cast iron aftermarket. So there's a lot of stuff to take in there, guys. So it just depends on, you know, what you're wanting out of your engine, and nobody can tell you that but you. But I know a lot of times, you know, these engines we build, we want, you know, we want to be, you know, king of the street. I know I do, but that's just not reality unless you've got just a lot of money. And if you've really got that much money, just go out and buy a crate motor, okay? Or have a professional guy rebuild your engine, you know, if you're really looking for some high horsepower numbers. But like I said, most of my builds are just, you know, light towing. I am probably going to be doing a 388 in the future, and that I got some ideas for that. But this one, like I said, bread and butter, $350. I also wanted to mention, guys, that you know, this engine originally had 223,000 miles on it before it started having a rod knock on it, and that's when the owner decided to take it apart, take it out, and go through this process. Now he obviously took it up to the machine shop, and they looked at the old crankshaft, which I don't have, and they said you need a new crankshaft. So he opted to get one of these 3.48 inch stroke crankshafts, which gives you right about 350 cubic inches. Now it is bored. You'll probably get 355 cubic inches out of it. Now, guys, if I'm at the point where my engine needs a new crankshaft and he bought new rods for it, I'm upgrading to a 383. Okay, I'll get that extra 33 cubic inches, and I'm going to get more torque, and I'm going to get more horsepower. Okay, and the crankshaft, I bet, costs virtually the same as did the rods and the pistons. It wouldn't be that much of a difference. Now, if upgrading, was going to cost an extra $2,000 or $3,000, depending on what kind of engine you have, then that's a question only you can answer. But I'm just saying, if it makes sense, I would do an upgrade. Now, guys, you can look and see there's been some money put in these heads right here. I want to say that the receipt I got from the guy was about $600 he put in these heads. Okay. Now, these are Vortec 906s, and I don't know what condition they were in, when he pulled them off the motor, but they look in A1 condition now, and I had those checked out by the machine shop. Those are some more than likely what you'd be pulling off of some old crusty motor. Those are 487s off of a 1972 one-ton Chevy truck. But I don't know if I had to pay $600 to have those redone, or I could buy some Vortex for a little bit more money. I would be considering the Vortex. Okay. Now, if you're on an extreme budget, you can redo those heads yourself. Those right there, there's nothing really wrong with them, except they need to have a new valve job, and they need to be cleaned up, and new valve springs, and whatnot. But that would be more budget friendly. But if you're going after the high horsepower, you can make horsepower with Vortex, or you can buy some aluminum aftermarket heads. That's, like I said, that's a decision that you need to make. Now, guys, most of my builds are just for basic transportation, grocery getter, going up to Home Depot, pulling a trailer, pulling lawn equipment, maybe a boat, something like that. If I was building a high horsepower application, I'd definitely ask the machine shop how to go about it and what they would recommend. And they might even, if you tell them, like, oh, I'd like, 1200 horsepower, they'd probably say, well, you need to get rid of this engine right here, okay? Because, yeah, you could probably get 1200 horsepower out of this, no problem, but, is it going to last consistently before it comes apart? Because the block's just not made for that. So, those are some questions you need to answer, or some questions you need to ask yourself. These are the new rods and pistons that came with this engine. And guys, you notice those numbers on there. I took that up to the machine shop and I had it balanced. I had that. I took the crankshaft. I don't know where my new balancer is. It's probably buried around here. I did not use the old balancer, and I used a new flex plate, and they were able to balance the engine. Now, that is a good idea if you want a nice, long-lasting engine and it's not going to vibrate itself apart. So that is an option. It's not necessary, but on this engine, being I didn't know everything about it, and it had a aftermarket crankshaft and aftermarket rods and pistons, I thought balancing was a good idea. I have put a few engines together that were, where you reuse the pistons and the rods, and maybe the crankshaft was turned, and I didn't have any issues. Okay, but when you start changing components, it might be a good idea to get some balancing done. Okay, guys, I would say that it's not 100% that you need an engine stand, but having one makes the job a lot easier. That red one came with this engine. Okay, that's one I got off of Craigslist. That was only like $50. Some guy rebuilt an engine, said he wouldn't rebuild it anymore, and $50. I thought that was a fair price. So, but I did have an acquaintance one time, and he was too cheap to buy an engine stand, and I didn't have one at the time. And what he did is he went over to his grandparents' house, and he laid the engine on the picnic table they had over there, and he rolled it as he worked on it. We would roll it back, and Yeah, it'll work. I mean, if you're on an extreme budget, you know, you could do that. If you could borrow one from somebody, that would definitely be the way to go. But I just wanted to throw that out there. Okay, this is the oil pump that came with the engine. You know, I would have probably splurged and got a new pickup, but they did weld it, so I'll give them that. Okay. I've seen some videos here on YouTube, and they say that you don't need a new oil pump. Okay. And I've seen some videos that say that you do. And I don't know if guys, if this was a running engine and for some reason I decided to, you know, upgrade it or whatever, and I knew the oil pump was good and I only had 10 or 20,000 miles on it or whatever, then I don't know, I might be tempted to reuse the oil pump that was in there, because the one I put in there would be new. And the reason I'm talking about this is that guy I told you about that had the Corvette and the 350 and all that. He asked me to come over when I was going to going to school, come over there like 10:30 at night and helped him put the engine together. And he, when we got to put the oil pump on, I said, "Where's the oil pump at?" He goes, "It's right over there." And I'm like, "Man, I don't see it." And it was this old nasty thing that he had pulled out. You know, it was the original one. I said, "No, where's the new one?" He goes, "I'm going to use that one." I said, "Look, you need to put a new one in there." And he said, "Well, I don't have the money." You know, but he had enough money for a chrome oil pan, and he had enough money for chrome valve covers. You know, which, you know, he could have done without the chrome oil pan. You could have put the chrome valve covers on later. But so he put it together, and it started up and it ran, and I think he had about 5 psi oil pressure, and then he drove it like that for a little while till the oil pressure just completely went out, and then we had to pull the engine back out and put a new oil pump in it. So guys, they're not that expensive, you know. Now I always put a high volume oil pump, but usually when I do a rebuild, that's what I do. Now I know some people say, "Oh, you don't need to do that," and all that, but I want the oiling working. Okay. All right, guys. Another thing I do not do is I do not put a new engine together without using ARP or some type of really strong connecting rod bolt. I do not reuse the old ones. Okay. Now I guess if you were, you know, just building an engine to put around with, and you weren't gonna, you know, really put it under a load, maybe you could get away with the old ones. Okay, I'm sure it's been done quite a bit, but something like this, I'm going to invest in ARP bolts. Now this is for a different engine, and those are ARP rod bolts. Okay, now the head bolts, I did buy some for a build a while back, but I wasn't using the factory cylinder heads, so I bought a set of bolts and stuff for that, you know. But usually I don't do that. All right, you're going to need to pick up a few tools. Now this is a old torque wrench that my dad gave me, and this I'd already had this one, and he just gave that to me as an extra. This is one I got off of Summit. That's the brand. And I tested them, and this one tests the same as that one. It gives the same readings and everything. So just because you see one of these like this doesn't mean that it's a piece of junk. This will get the job done. As a matter of fact, I built a couple engines back in the day with stuff like this, because I had a Craftsman that was like this, and both of them have been stolen. So, but anyway, so you're going to need some of those tools. You're going to need something like that to get the balancer off. Now guys, these really simplify putting the pistons in. Now I'll do a part 2 on some of the stuff that we're doing. I've got one there for 30 and one for 60 over. So, and this is for your piston rings, and this right here, I'll pull that out, all that stuff, that is a Cam Dynamics, if y'all remember them from back in the day, pre-oiler. You spin that and it oils the engine up before you start it. That's what I usually do, is get that thing nice and lubricated. Something else you're going to need is you're going to need some of this stuff right here. You can use that, or, you know, if you're old school like me, you can put that on there, and you put that in the bores and put that on everything. And if you don't start the engine up for 6 months or a year, I've had engines waited a year before I started, this stuff is still going to be on there. So, but that's your choice. I know some people, they get very personal on, you know, what they use to put around the bearings and, you know, everything. And it's, I don't know, it's almost like a religious experience to them. But you can use some of that. Well, anyway, I'll get into the assembly and some other stuff that you need, but you're going to need some Permatex. You can use some of that, and you're going to need some of this. This is really old school. And guys, this is a magnetic bolt for the oil pan, and that way if there's any metal shavings. The other thing I want to say, guys, is if you're doing a flat tappet cam, you want to make sure you get some of this. I did a video about this before. This came from PAW, Performance Automotive Wholesalers, and that is molybdenum disulfide grease for flat tappet cam break-in. Now that is a roller cam. I think I mentioned that before, a Summit 8800, and that does not require this type of lube. Now you can reuse a roller cam as long as, you know, it's okay. A flat tappet cam, you can reuse them too, but you have to make sure you put all the lifters, you label them and put them right back in the same bore and everything, and then I would put this stuff back on here. So, and you can put a flat tappet in this engine right here. I don't know why you'd want to, but you can. Okay, I'm going with the roller cam. And now they say that you can reuse the lifters. I don't know where they're at, but I hate when that happens. Now they say that you can reuse the roller lifters. Now, guys, 223,000. The guy was, I guess, smart enough to buy some new ones. Okay, so I'll be putting those new ones back in there. He gave me the old ones. All right, but these are some decisions you have to make, and a lot of times our decisions are kind of coerced by our budget. You know. Okay, well, like I said, part 2, I'll do a little assembly, and I don't have any plastic gauge. Yeah, I do. I got some plastic gauge around here somewhere. Alright, if you're a first timer, you might want to pick up some of this, it's called plastic gauge, and what it does is it can measure the bearing clearances when you put the rods and mains together. And that's to check to make sure that the bearings are going to function in there, and make sure that the machine shop, you know, cut it down the right amount. I had an engine years ago I put together. It was a Ford 306 cylinder, and I did not measure it. And after I got it in the car and started driving it, you could hear the tapping. And what had happened is the crankshaft was not sized properly on the number 6 rod journal. So anyway, guys, if you do it beforehand, before you put it in the car, it'll save yourself a lot of grief. Now you can buy the expensive measurement tools to, you know, size the journals and all that yourself, you know. But this is just a cheap, easy way to do it, especially, you know, if you're only going to build one engine, or maybe you're going to build an engine every 7 or 8 years, you know. Otherwise, you got those expensive measurement tools just laying around on your shelf and you're not using them for anything. Something I almost forgot is the old rods that you pull out. You're going to have them checked. The machine shop will make sure they're not bent or, you know, have some type of damage. They'll inspect the pistons, and if they're all good, then they can resize these. Okay, and that's what I had happen to these right here. These were all good and checked out, and I had them resized. Okay, so that's something else you want to do if you're reusing the old rods. This is a word to the wise out there. If you're doing a flat tappet camshaft, you want to get some of this for break-in. Okay, this does not have any detergent in it, and this is going to be great for, you know, breaking in that camshaft. And if you use some of this paste, I think you're going to be good. Now, if you use this to break in a flat tappet, now guys, if you're breaking in a roller cam, you know, it doesn't really matter. You know, I would just use a good quality oil. Okay, but for flat tappets, if you put this in there, this has a lot of zinc in it, but it also has a lot of detergent in it that washes the zinc off of the cam lobes, okay, and can wear them out. So Now after you've broken it in, then you can, maybe you could use that, But for break-in, this is something, you could use this or something like it, okay? Okay, well, invariably, I'm sure I left something out or left a couple things out. If you guys in the comment section would help me out, help everyone else out with what I forgot, it would be greatly appreciated. I'll do part 2 in a while, and I want to discuss, the first thing you do after you get your engine back from the machine shop and your parts. First thing you need to do, you just can't just slap it together, guys. So that'll be part 2. Alright, well, this is Gearhead 327, and remember, stay greasy, my friends.